Rarely does a camera come along that is good at everything, and the Fujifilm X-T3 checks a lot of boxes. I got the X-T3 shortly after launch and have been using it as my primary camera for both client and personal projects ever since. After 11 months with the camera, I can confirm that it produces a great image and is a joy to use, but it's a camera that is far from perfect. In this video, I'll be going in depth into what the camera can do, what the camera can't do, and what you should consider if you are thinking about using it. Let's do it. Hey everyone, my name is James Whyte. I'm an engineer turned filmmaker, and before we get any further, I'll let you know that this video is focused on using the X-T3 for video, not video and photo. Also, I don't have the camera in hand because I'm using it to record. The Fujifilm X-T3 has a 26.1 megapixel aps-c size sensor and takes Fujifilm X mount lenses. This is the silver version, and it also comes in all black. The camera shoots up to 11 frames per second with the mechanical shutter and up to 30 frames per second with the electronic shutter at a 1.25 times crop. While it's an amazing photographic tool, the video recording specs are especially impressive. The X-T3 records in resolutions up to DCI 4K at up to 60 frames per second and lets you choose between H.264 8-bit or H.265 10-bit recording, both 420. You have your choice of all intra or long GOP compression at a variety of bit rates up to 400 megabits per second. That's a lot of options, and it means that you can create the kinds of files most suited for your workflow. The X-T3 also has the option to record in 120 frames per second at 1080p, an option that conforms the files in camera and does so without recording audio. The X-T3 is truly a beast when it comes to video recording. And it's not just an impressive spec sheet, the camera really delivers. The entire intro sequence to this video was recorded on the X-T3 internally at 4K 10-bit using the H.265 codec. It was recorded with the Eterna film simulation and then graded manually in Resolve. Keep in mind that the X-T3 suffers from the common recording limit of 29 minutes 59 seconds per recorded movie file. This can be circumvented via the use of an external recorder. The camera will output 10-bit 422 at up to DCI 4K 60 via mini HDMI, which leads us to the ports, buttons, and dials. And there's a lot of them. Let's start on the top, with the most notable controls being the sensitivity dial, shutter speed dial, and the exposure compensation dial that give the X-T3 a lot of its iconic look. On the back, the camera has a 3-inch touchscreen, a centrally placed electronic viewfinder, navigation and menu buttons, and plenty of controls that can be customized. The camera has a command dial on the front, along with a function button, a tally light, and the focus mode switch. The side features microphone in and headphone out ports, USB-C port, and mini HDMI. It's obvious Fujifilm has filmmakers in mind because the cover here is removable. This is much cleaner than the dangling covers found on other cameras. I took this port cover off on the day I got the camera and only put it back on to demonstrate taking it off. The other side of the camera has not one, but 2 card slots. Imagine that. Imagine using a camera with 2 card slots. I'm very grateful to have them. Functionally, the camera is a pleasure to use, with high image quality, especially in video, extensive customizability, and solid build quality for all parts of the camera but the screen assembly. More on that later. The hand grip is small, though all the buttons are still close enough to where you'd want them to be. Form definitely has priority over ergonomic function, but the result is a gorgeous piece of technology. The camera can also be built out for more features or solely to impress clients. It's also small if you want to be discreet, easily fitting into a bag or even a large jacket pocket. The average person that knows nothing about cameras will not expect a retro-looking camera of this size to record video way beyond what could be considered professional. Use this to your advantage to get the shots you want. Once you become familiar with the button layout, the camera is very easy to use, with all the settings easily accessible and a lot of customizability. The function buttons, command dials, navigation dials, and even gestures on the touchscreen can all be customized. There's a quick menu, which can be customized, and also a non-quick menu that can be customized. I guess we could call that a regular menu. It's called the My menu. I've set mine up with the movie recording options I need access to most, such as frame rate, codec, log, HLG, and audio options. There are separate audio settings for internal and external microphones, with the internal mic level adjustment able to go down to -30 dB. In an autofocus mode, focus can be set with the joystick or by tapping on the screen. When using the viewfinder, focus can be set by sliding your finger on the touchscreen. The auto exposure and autofocus lock buttons are very useful when recording video, and placed for convenient access. I can have the camera set focus and then lock focus so it doesn't change unexpectedly. It's the ease of autofocus with the trust of manual focus, all without leaving an autofocus mode. The auto exposure lock is equally convenient if you're not in full manual control, and I have the auto white balance lock set to the top function button. Having separate, dedicated controls for sensitivity, shutter speed, and aperture is wonderful, and it makes much more sense than the mode dial found on other cameras. After learning how to shoot in manual mode years ago, I've never used anything else, and having all of those separate, dedicated controls makes for the most intuitive layout for a camera that I've used yet. The hardest part in becoming familiar with the X-T3 after coming from Canon was remembering that the focus mode switch is on the front of the camera body, not the lens. I have fine adjustment of shutter speed set to the rear command dial, and if we scroll over, we'll find that there's a 1/48th of a second option, giving you a perfect 180-degree shutter for 24 frame per second capture. They could have left it at 1/50th, like on many other cameras, but including the 1/48th of a second option is an indication that Fujifilm is keeping filmmakers in mind. Alright, we've got to talk about battery life. Battery life is not one of the X-T3's strongest capabilities. If you use the X-T3 for photography, especially as a hobbyist, then you'll probably be fine by carrying a few extra spare batteries. But if you use the X-T3 for video, and if you use the X-T3 for client work, especially with video, if you use the X-T3 to make money, you should not rely on swapping the internal battery 8 times in one day. You're going to need a better solution, and Fujifilm's X-T3 battery grip is the most convenient. The grip uses the same batteries as the camera body, and unlike the battery grips of many other cameras, this one doesn't fill the space of the internal camera battery. This means you can run the 2 batteries in the grip down to completion, using the third one in the camera body as a buffer as you find a convenient time to change batteries. This is much more efficient than changing batteries before they're completely depleted out of a fear that you'll have to change batteries at an inconvenient time. Having the grip also makes it much easier to change batteries when your camera is mounted on a tripod or on some other type of rig. It comes with an AC adapter to continuously power the camera from the wall or charge 2 batteries at once. The added bulk the grip adds on the front of the camera means Fujifilm acknowledges users wanted more to hold here. A better move would have been to add bulk to the camera body itself, which would have provided room for a larger battery. That would also have meant that this vertical growth could have been trimmed from the grip, making the grip much easier to pack on its own. An odd feature of the grip is that it has a place to store the cover that comes off the camera, but does not have a place to store the cover that comes off the grip. This is not due to lack of space, and it seems like a really good idea, only implemented halfway. At $329, the grip is fairly expensive, but if you use the X-T3 for video, get the battery grip. You will be glad you have it every time you use it. A cheaper option is to power the X-T3 via USB-C using a USB battery pack. You'll need a battery pack that supports the USB power delivery specification in order to have fast charging that keeps up with the camera. Fujifilm recommends the Anker PowerCore Plus 26800 PD and the PowerCore Speed 20000 PD. Using a battery pack that does not support the USB power delivery specification still works, but it charges the camera much more slowly and will not keep up with the camera's power draw. If you don't have the camera built out, you can tether to a battery pack in your pocket. It's not an ideal solution, but neither are Fuji's tiny batteries. If you put the X-T3 on rails, consider mounting a USB battery pack or adding a V-mount battery to your setup. Regardless of how you keep the X-T3 powered, it delivers beautiful images and movies, and 10-bit high bitrate recordings mean that movie files have a lot of room for color grading. Fujifilm includes various film simulations, which is their way of saying picture profiles, including Eterna, which is designed for movie recording. To put something very complicated very simply, movie files recorded using the Eterna picture profile have lower contrast and lower saturation than what other picture profiles would provide. This gives you a better place from which to start color grading. To get the most dynamic range from the X-T3, you're going to want to record in f-log or hybrid log gamma modes. Like all cameras, the X-T3's dynamic range changes slightly with ISO. To achieve the highest dynamic range, f-log has a minimum sensitivity of ISO 640, and HLG has a minimum sensitivity of ISO 1000. Even when you're not recording F-Log or HLG and you're recording with a film simulation, it's still recommended that you stick with an ISO of 640 or slightly above to get the highest dynamic range. Fujifilm provides a LUT to apply the Eterna film simulation on F-Log and HLG recordings. Recording in F-Log or HLG and then applying the film simulation in post provides higher dynamic range than recording with Eterna directly in the camera. Of course, final image quality entirely depends on your ability to color grade. In the description, I have a link where you can download the Eterna conversion LUT directly from Fujifilm. Performance at higher ISOs is fairly good. Add some noise reduction in post, and if you're recording at a high bitrate, you can still grade pretty heavily. Of course, I always keep sensitivity fairly low for client work, but I don't worry about raising it when I'm working on a personal project. This is because YouTube compression will smooth out everything anyway. The camera captures 120 frames per second at 1080p at a rich 200 megabits per second, making the footage easily gradable. The X-T3's kit lens is an 18-55 2.8-4 with image stabilization. It's small, lightweight, and has excellent quality, both in construction and in the images it delivers. It's fairly fast, surprisingly sharp, and both photographers and filmmakers will appreciate how much better it performs than other kit lenses in its price range. If you already have lenses for another camera system that you'll be adapting to the X-T3 and just get the kit lens so you have a native piece of glass, you'll be quite happy with it. The X-T3's autofocus is reliable with native lenses, and the responsiveness and speed can be changed via the camera settings. X-T3 firmware version 3.00 brought many autofocus improvements, including improved accuracy of face detection and the ability to choose between multiple faces in a scene. Autofocus is not as good with adapted glass, but that's no fault of the camera body. The X-T3 has a corresponding mobile app for remote capture and review of media, but the live view frequently lags, making it a very frustrating experience. Still, it's good enough you may consider it from time to time. Probably only for photos though, because it doesn't seem to capture 4K, reverting back to 1080p. The ability to use two cards in the X-T3 is amazing, and should be a feature of all cameras that take themselves seriously. You can capture photos to both cards in parallel for immediate backup of what you capture, but you cannot do that for movie files. Video files can only be written to the cards in series, writing to one card, then the next. You can't have a backup when you capture. I assume that this glaring limitation is caused by limited processing power or some other sort of technical limitation, and I would love to see this fixed in a future Fuji camera. That weirdness aside, I'm very happy to say that the X-T3 performs very well in harsh environments. Yes, you should always keep your equipment within its recommended operating environment and out of harm's way. But I've had the X-T3 covered in salt spray. I've taken it through very drastic temperature and humidity changes while operating, and it has performed flawlessly. Speaking of performing flawlessly, we should talk about the X-T3's screen, which doesn't. The display itself is bright and sharp and high quality, but while the main bulk of the camera feels solid and well built, the screen assembly does not. It feels like a poor match, like the screen assembly should be from another camera with much lower overall build quality. It does not feel strong. I have been very, very gentle with the screen assembly since the day I got the camera, and it turns out that was a very wise move. You can't pull out the screen from the top or right edges, and the bottom edge is also inaccessible when the grip is attached. The only options are to pull the screen down from the top left corner or up from the bottom left corner. There are tabs on these corners to make this easier. When you manipulate the screen from its corners, as you're supposed to do, the entire screen assembly flexes. This weakens the screen assembly over time, and the screen on my copy of the X-T3 is now separating from its housing. If this worsens, as I expect it to with continued use, I'll glue it back down. But this is not a problem I was expecting to have. A problem I was expecting to have is that the screen on the X-T3 doesn't flip around to the front. No matter the quality of the implementation, this screen design is not the best. All filmmakers know that this type of screen design is much better. It's stored when not in use. You can look normal to the screen when you have the camera pointed down, or when you're holding the camera above your head. When the camera is below you, you can angle the screen how you like for both landscape and portrait modes. And, most importantly, the screen swivels around to the front so you can see yourself. Now, I know it's a rare use case. I know it's rare to see people using cameras in configurations like this. I mean, imagine wanting to talk to your camera. Imagine setting up your camera on a tripod and talking into it. What a rare use case that would be. In a video posted by Photogear News, a Fujifilm Marketing Manager explained that they chose the screen design that they did because a screen design like this would have added bulk to the camera because of a larger hinge on the side. The interview is linked in the description. Of course, regrettable engineering can sometimes be solved by additional engineering, although this solution no longer has the small form factor that a mirrorless system provides. Fujifilm made a lot of good engineering decisions with the X-T3. Their selection of a screen articulation mechanism was not one of them. However, Fujifilm shouldn't feel too bad about the regrettable screen articulation on the X-T3, because most of their competitors are making the same decision. We see similar designs on Nikon Z6 and Z7, and Sony's entire line of Alpha 7s and the Alpha 9. Panasonic, coming from the legendary GH5 and GH5S, got it right with the S1H, but dropped the ball with the screens on the S1 and S1R. Only one company is consistently getting screen design right, and that is Canon. The 6D Mark II, the M50, EOS R, EOS RP, SL3, 90D. I'll give half credit to the M6 Mark II, just like Sony's A6600. The reason why I'm making such a big deal out of this is because choosing a screen articulation design like this, that gives you so many more options for viewing, significantly increases the usability of a camera with effectively no additional cost to a manufacturer. You're swapping out one screen design for another. This isn't about adding a better sensor, or adding a faster processor, or adding in-body image stabilization, or something else that could knock a camera into a higher price tier. This is about significantly increasing the usability of a camera simply by making an intelligent engineering decision. If we keep seeing companies release cameras with screen designs that don't flip the screen around to the front, we will know which camera companies are paying attention and which ones are not. And that takes us to a discussion of competitors. The X-T3 is an incredibly spec'd and beautiful camera, but like any piece of technology, its capabilities only matter when put in context with its price and the offerings of competitors. And this is actually where the X-T3 shines the most. The X-T3 is $1,500 body only. At this price point, no other camera offers what the X-T3 offers, especially when recording internally. If you move up a few $100s, you see cameras like Nikon Z6, Sony's A7III, and Canon's EOS R, all of which offer full frame, but can't match the X-T3's frame rates, codecs, and bit rates. Even at higher price points, very few cameras meet or exceed what the X-T3 offers. There are more capable cameras, such as Panasonic's S1H, but that camera is thousands of dollars more expensive. There's only one camera that provides better video than what the X-T3 offers, anywhere near the X-T3's price point. And that is Blackmagic Design's Pocket Cinema Camera 4K, which is, of course, a cinema camera, and only suited for recording video, not doing video, and photo. The conclusion is you can't find a better camera than the X-T3 for both video and photo work anywhere near a $1,500 price point. And this is true even as we look into the near future. As time goes on, we're going to see successors for cameras such as the A7S II and the GH5 and GH5S, and no doubt the successors to those cameras will record better video than the X-T3. But there's no way those cameras will do it anywhere near a $1,500 price point. If you shoot both photos and video, want better video than what the X-T3 can provide internally, and have a little more to spend, your best bet is to still get an X-T3 and then get something like an external monitor and recorder, like this Atomos Ninja 5. This offers a bright 5-inch 1080p display with monitoring tools, and it allows you to record in ProRes and DNX directly onto computer SSDs. It produces much higher quality video files and much larger video files than what the X-T3 can record internally. What the X-T3 records internally is very good, but the video files you get out of the Ninja 5 are much better. When considered together, the X-T3 and Ninja 5 have a total base system cost of $2,200, and no other camera can deliver what they deliver at this price point either. There's Blackmagic Design's Pocket Cinema Camera 6K, but again, that's only suited for video, not video, and photo. There are some improvements Fuji could make for the successor of the X-T3 beyond spec upgrades. We've already talked about screen articulation, the need for larger battery life and a larger hand grip, and the need to record video to both cards in parallel. The X-T3 should also have included autofocus tracking for any object, not just faces and eyes. The dial locks would be much more useful as buttons to switch between auto and manual. This would be easier than having to turn a dial all the way around and find the A, especially in the dark. Video via HDMI cuts out for a few frames when you change the view on the X-T3 or even engage the proximity sensor. This obviously needs a fix, and Fuji would really go above and beyond if they switched out the mini HDMI for a full-size HDMI. Fortunately, none of those upgrades would require significant spending for research or implementation, and I'm very excited to see what Fujifilm does next. So, almost a year after the release of the X-T3, if I had to get another camera right now, I'd get the same one. It's very hard to make a camera that is good at everything, and Fuji got a lot right with the X-T3. Its internal recording of 4K 60 in 10-bit H.265 at 400 megabits per second is insane, and rarely matched even by more expensive cameras. But more importantly, the camera is a joy to use, and if you like your equipment, you'll be using it more often. And at the end of the day, it's not about the camera that you use. It's about the art that you create. And that's the full review. 2 last notes. First, if you're going to record at 400 megabits per second, you're going to need SD cards rated to V60 or higher. Second, if you're going to get the X-T3, or especially if you already have the X-T3, make sure that your camera firmware is up to date. I have a link in the description for where you can download the latest firmware directly from Fujifilm. I'm going to be coming out with a full review of the Atomos Ninja 5 and talking about how I use it with the X-T3. So if you have any questions on the Ninja 5 or the X-T3 or using them together or on any other topic, let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.